Hi, welcome to Curtain Call. I'm Hedy Weiss, theater and dance critic for the Chicago Sun-Times, and today it is my privilege to welcome Berry Gordy, who I call the Emperor of Motown, and Charles Randolph Wright, director of Motown The Musical, which is going to have the premiere of its national tour in Chicago. I wanted to start with just a very basic question about, you have this Motown history, and then you were very successful in Hollywood. And what was the siren call of Broadway?
Just the next step. I've always loved Broadway. I love everything.
What was the music you grew up with? Not the music you created, but the music
Well, the music I grew up with was the Mills Brothers, the Ink Spots, because they sung songs that related to me. They sung songs about, I'm going to buy a paper doll that I can call my own because other fellas cannot steal. And I realized it affected me because people were stealing my girlfriends before I even got them. So, I said, wait a minute, so this is a clever song about, a paper doll. And then they came back with, "You're nobody till somebody loves you," and I thought, really, if nobody loves me, I'm nobody, So it was like, and I ended up using that in my Broadway play, of course. That's a big song in my Broadway, one of the big songs in my Broadway play. And as I would write songs, I tried to write songs that meant something to me, that would mean something to everybody else. And then I got the idea that if they mean something to me, they mean something to everybody around the world. But when I started, it was only black stations would play your music. And so the hardest job I had was, actually I had two hard jobs. One was getting white disc jockeys to realize that our music was popular, because pop stands for popular, and they were saying, this is a pop station, we can't play your music. I said, wait a minute, my music is popular, people like my music. And so I convinced one disc jockey in Detroit to play it on the white stations, and I was right, they liked good music, so that kind of started me on that road.
When you wrote songs, did you play an instrument, or did you sing into a tape recorder, or how did you write songs?
I wrote songs by both, singing tape recorder, dreaming of stuff, waking up, thinking of my personal life and what I wanted. Like when I was really, really, really broke, I wrote a song called Money, That's What I Want. Your love give me such a thrill, but your love don't pay my bill, I need money. And I felt that people would relate to that.
Right.
And
But you also, he plays piano, so
Okay.
a lot of times we'll get him to, even in rehearsal, to start playing because he has a feel that no one else has. It's just this thing that happens. And earlier too, when you were saying, I think the thing about the show being on Broadway is that it's live. And with the Motown Review, with all of the performances that they did, there's nothing that can compare to live performance. And that's what we love. And that's where he, really started that real world of touring with the Motown Review. So the idea of having that on Broadway now in Chicago and then around the country emulates what he did years ago. I think he keeps topping himself that way.
So in the show, is there that kind of house band? Is that part of the show? Is that on stage, or is it all coming out of the pit and the orchestra for the show? How does the music work?
Well, the orchestra is in the pit and it comes through that, but you see moments in performance where you realize that the band is there, so you get the feeling of what that is. But the actual sound is from the orchestra, and that sound is incredible because we wanted the sound not to be Broadway, but to be authentic. He often says that he's bringing Motown to Broadway, not a Broadway version of Motown. So the sound was imperative that it reflects what those records had. But it's sort of, in a way too, it's also like you have a sound that's on record, you also have a live sound that happens. So it became, we talked about all those different things, like what's the live sound, what's the recorded sound, why did this happen, where did the hand clap come, where the hand claps are imperative, that saxophone's imperative, that tambourine, how to get that right mixture. And having him around helped us figure out how to do it, what's missing, because he can hear something immediately and say that's too high, that's too low, something that's not mixed right. He lived that, and so the whole thing for us was to create Motown the Musical the way that the Motown records were also created. So it is the same energy, the same love that he talks about, the same passion, and the same competition. It has all of that together.
I know that Chicago will embrace this story. Mr. Berry Gordy, who called me about 3 years ago and asked me to join him, and there are so many aspects of Motown, and I said, what story do you want to tell? And he said, I really want to tell the story of the truth of we were all kids with passion and talent making a difference. And if that doesn't personify the Chicago theater scene, I don't know what does. This is a passionate town. You believe in the arts. You promote the arts. You have some of the best venues, best museums. And to be here and be here for 12 weeks has been great, not only for, I think, the Chicago audiences, but also for our great company.
With me now are Patricia Wilcox and Warren Adams. They're the two choreographers working on Motown The Musical. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, the movement for most of these artists in Motown is so iconic. How close did you stay to what people know as the moves? And then what did you have to do to make it a Broadway show?
We investigated some of the iconic movement, but I think what we really were most interested in is just finding the essence of each particular group or each individual and building our vision on top of that. So, I mean, there are certain things that you cannot avoid, like, the opening of the Jackson 5 on Ed Sullivan Show, or as Patty will say, stop in the name of love. It's the only way, and that's what people expect. But for the most part, I'd say it was about us taking our vision, looking at what that original essence was, and building something new, something fresh.
Mm-hmm. And what did Berry Gordy say about the whole philosophy behind the movement? Obviously, some of the groups came and they had already had their moves. They did whatever they did. But what did he want to do, and how did he see movement or dance as the kind of descriptor of the group?
Well, they're so different, these groups. If you look at the Temptations, they're smooth and they glide, and it's very different from the Four Tops, and it's very different from the Contours, which is grittier. And I think for us it was to give it our own voice and yet pay respect to what was the essence of these groups anyway. As Warren mentioned earlier, you can't do Stop in the Name of Love without doing Stop. After that, you can do anything that you want. And the Temps move, the Temps walk is this. The Four Tops rock step. So those are the iconic moves that have to be a part of it. And then it's open.
Thank you very much for joining us, Warren Adams, Patricia Wilcox, and thank you for joining us on Curtain Call.